Amarachi was full of joy. In just a few weeks, she would marry Chinidu, the man she had prayed for, the love of her life. Their engagement dinner in Owerri was perfect, filled with laughter, music, and family. Amarachi looked beautiful, her eyes shining with love and excitement. Everything felt like a dream, until her elder sister, Ngozi, leaned in close to Chinidu and whispered something that changed everything. She said, "She's hiding a baby. A baby she had with another man." The words were quiet, but they hit Chinidu like thunder. He froze. His smile vanished. Amarachi didn't hear what was said, but she felt something shift in the air. Suddenly, Chinidu was distant, cold. The dinner ended in awkward silence. The next morning, he disappeared. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Amarachi's heart sank. Then her family turned on her too. Her father couldn't look at her. Her mother shouted in anger, "How could you bring this shame to our family?" Amarachi didn't say a word. She didn't fight back. She simply packed her bags, left the engagement ring on the table, and walked away. She went to Enugu, to the quiet life she had built for the baby everyone believed was hers. But the truth was deeper. Years ago, Ngozi had begged Amarachi to raise that baby as her own. And now, after all this time, Ngozi had turned her biggest sacrifice into a weapon. Amarachi stayed silent. But she would not stay broken. The morning after the engagement dinner, Amarachi woke up smiling. She had spent the night dreaming about her wedding, the dress, the music, the moment she would walk down the aisle to meet Chinidu. But something felt strange. Her phone was too quiet. No "good morning, my love." No missed calls. No messages. She brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he was still asleep or busy. But as the hours passed, her smile faded. She called him, no answer. She tried again, still nothing. She sent him a message, blue ticks, no reply. Her heart began to race. Something was wrong. Deep down, she felt it. By evening, the truth hit her like a slap: Chinidu had ghosted her. Confused and broken, Amarachi went back to her family home, hoping to find comfort. But what she met was even more painful. Her father, who had always been her rock, didn't even look at her. He sat quietly, staring at the floor, his face tight with anger. Her mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her voice shaking with rage. "How could you bring this shame to our family?" she shouted. Amarachi's eyes widened. What shame? She wanted to scream. But no words came out. It was clear they had heard something terrible, and they believed it. She stood there, frozen, feeling like a stranger in her own home. No one asked her what happened. No one gave her a chance to speak. They had already made up their minds. The pain in her chest was sharp and heavy. It was worse than heartbreak, it was betrayal. She realized in that moment that Ngozi must have told them the same lie she told Chinidu. A lie that Amarachi had a child with another man. A child she was hiding. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Slowly, she turned and walked to her room. She packed her things quietly. There was nothing left to say. She placed the engagement ring on the table, looked around the house one last time, and walked out. No one stopped her. She took a late-night bus to Enugu, where her heart had been living in secret for the past 6 years, with little Yuzo. Everyone thought Yuzo was her son. But they didn't know the truth. Years ago, when Ngozi gave birth and was too scared to face the world, she had begged Amarachi to help. Amarachi had said yes out of love, out of loyalty. She raised that child, kept that secret, and lost everything because of it. Now, alone in Enugu, Amarachi held Yuzo close and whispered, "It's just us now." She had no fiancé, no family support, and no one to trust. But she still had her strength. And one day, they would all know the truth. Amarachi didn't argue. She didn't scream or try to explain. She just stood there, heart shattered, while her mother's angry words echoed in her ears. Her father still refused to look at her. The same man who once called her his pride and joy now acted like she didn't exist. Chinidu had vanished. Her family had turned their backs. And all because of a secret she never wanted to carry, a secret that wasn't even hers. She went to her room quietly. Her hands shook as she packed her clothes into a small bag. Her engagement ring, the one that once made her heart flutter, now felt like a lie. She took it off and placed it gently on the bedside table. No notes. No goodbyes. She walked out of the house that had been her home for years, without looking back. There was nothing left for her there. Her dreams had crumbled overnight. She boarded a night bus to Enugu, sitting alone near the window, staring into the darkness outside. Her mind was full of memories. Sweet ones of Chinidu's promises and bitter ones of Ngozi's betrayal. But deeper than all of that was the secret. The one she had hidden for 6 long years. A baby. Yuzo. Everyone believed Yuzo was Amarachi's son. Even Chinidu. Even her parents. They thought she had made a mistake in her past and hidden the child. But the truth was different. So different. Years ago, Ngozi had shown up at Amarachi's door in the middle of a rainy night, carrying a newborn wrapped in a thin cloth. Her eyes were full of fear. Please, she had begged. Take the baby. Just for a while. I'll come back. Amarachi couldn't say no. She couldn't leave her sister like that. She took the baby in her arms, rocked him to sleep, and waited for Ngozi to return. But Ngozi never came back. Days turned to weeks. Weeks turned into months. Then years. Amarachi raised the child as her own, fed him, bathed him, held him through fevers, and walked him to school. She gave him all the love she had, even as she struggled with school and work. She kept the secret because she believed she was doing the right thing. She never told anyone. Not even Chinidu. She thought it would bring more pain than peace. And above all, she had promised her sister. But now that same sister had turned around and used the secret to destroy her. In Enugu, Amarachi reached the small flat she called home. Yuzo ran into her arms the moment she stepped in. "Mommy, I missed you," he said, hugging her tight. She knelt and held him close, tears filling her eyes. "I missed you too, baby," she whispered. That night, as Yuzo slept beside her, Amarachi stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Everything she had tried to protect had been turned against her. But even now, with nothing left, she felt a strange sense of peace. Because she still had Yuzo. And her silence was not weakness. It was strength. One day, the world would know. One day, the truth would rise. And on that day, Amarachi would no longer be silent. It was a stormy night, the kind where thunder shakes the windows and rain pours like the sky is crying. Amarachi had just come back from school, tired and soaked, when she heard a knock on the door. It was almost midnight. She opened it and saw her elder sister, Ngozi, standing there in the rain, shivering, her clothes soaked through. In her arms was a tiny baby, wrapped in a thin piece of cloth. Ngozi's eyes were red from crying, her lips trembling. Without a word, she stepped inside, water dripping from her clothes, and sat on the edge of the couch, holding the baby tightly against her chest. Amarachi stood frozen, confused and worried. "What happened?" she asked softly, kneeling beside her sister. Ngozi broke down into sobs. "I can't do this. I can't face them. I'm not ready. They'll kill me with shame," she cried. She looked at Amarachi, eyes full of desperation and fear. "Please, just take the baby. Just for a while. I'll come back. I just need time." Amarachi stared at her, shocked. She was young too, still in school, barely able to take care of herself. But she looked at the baby, so small, so helpless, and something inside her melted. Without thinking much, she nodded. Okay. Just for a while. Ngozi handed her the baby, kissed his forehead with trembling lips, and whispered, "His name is Yuzo." Then she left, into the rain, into the night, and never came back. Days passed. Amarachi waited. She checked her phone constantly, hoping Ngozi would call. She left messages. Nothing. Weeks turned into months. People started to ask questions, but Amarachi never said a word. She carried Yuzo on her back to school when she had no babysitter. She fed him from borrowed money, rocked him to sleep when he had nightmares, and whispered stories when he was sick. She missed classes, worked extra hours, and sacrificed her own life piece by piece, all to raise a child that wasn't hers. As the years rolled by, Amarachi stopped waiting for Ngozi. Deep down, she knew, her sister wasn't coming back. Yuzo began to call her mommy, and she never corrected him. She became everything to him. And even though her life was full of struggle and silence, she never let him feel unloved. No one knew the truth. Not her parents. Not her friends. Not even Shinidu, the man she had hoped to marry. She had carried that secret like a heavy rock in her heart, not for her own sake, but to protect Ngozi's name. She had stayed silent out of love. Out of loyalty. But now, that same sister had returned to stab her in the back. The very person she had saved from shame had thrown her into it. But Amarachi didn't regret that night. Because when she looked at Yuzo, his smile, his laughter, the way he held her hand, she knew she had chosen love. Even if the world didn't understand, even if she had lost everything else, she would never regret saving him. Years slowly passed, one day after another, and Amarachi quietly built a new life. It wasn't easy, but she stayed strong. In the busy city of Enugu, far from her past in Owerri, she worked hard every day, going to school during the day and taking small jobs at night. She did everything with one goal in her heart, to give little Yuzo a good life. To the world, she was just a young single mother. But no one knew the full story. No one knew that Yuzo was not her child by birth, but by love. And no one ever guessed that the secret she carried was not a mistake, but a sacrifice. Amarachi kept the truth hidden like a deep wound, locked away. She smiled when she needed to, laughed when she had to, and stayed silent when people judged her. Some whispered, some gave her pitying looks, but she never answered. She had promised herself that Yuzo would never feel unloved. She made sure he had everything she could afford. A clean home, warm food, bedtime stories, and hugs that made the world feel safe. She celebrated his birthdays with small cakes, sang to him when he cried, and stood proudly at his school events, clapping and cheering louder than anyone else. There were hard days, days when she skipped meals so Yuzo could eat, nights when she studied for exams with tired eyes while he slept beside her. But even when the world felt heavy, she never let Yuzo see her break. To him, she was mommy, and that was enough. She loved him with all her heart, and in return, he loved her with a smile that made all the pain fade away. But deep down, Amarachi knew the truth she was hiding would not stay hidden forever. Secrets like that don't die. They wait. They sit in silence, ticking like a time bomb, ready to explode when you least expect. She often wondered, what if Yuzo grew up and found out the truth from someone else? What if one day Ngozi returned, or someone from the past showed up? What would happen then? She tried not to think about it. She focused on the present, waking up early, packing Yuzo's lunch, getting him ready for school, and walking him to the gate with a kiss on his forehead. But her heart carried the weight of the silence. She had given up everything for a promise made in the dark, on a stormy night. Her own dreams. Her own happiness. Even love. And then, one day, everything changed. An invitation arrived for a cousin's wedding in Owerri. The same place where her life had fallen apart. At first, Amarachi wanted to tear it up. But something in her heart told her not to hide anymore. She looked at Yuzo, smiled, and said, "We're going home." She didn't know what was waiting for her. But one thing was sure, the time bomb she had hidden for years was about to go off. And this time, she wouldn't run. When Amarachi stepped off the bus in Owerri, the air felt heavy with memories. It had been years since she left, broken, judged, and abandoned. But now, she was back, not as the quiet, tearful girl who had run away, but as a woman who had survived storms. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her head held high, and her little boy, Yuzo, walked beside her proudly in his tiny suit. No one could tell what she had been through. But inside, Amarachi was calm. She knew this day would come. The wedding hall was full of laughter and music. People danced, took photos, and shared plates of jollof rice and meat. Amarachi smiled politely as she greeted distant cousins and old family friends. But her eyes searched for one face, Ngozi. Then, across the room, she saw her. Dressed in a sparkling gown, makeup perfect, laughing loudly next to a tall, handsome man, her fiancé. Ngozi looked happy, confident, untouchable. But Amarachi knew the truth hiding behind that smile. Ngozi noticed Amarachi too, and for a moment, her face froze. Then, with a smirk, she turned back to her friends and whispered something. Amarachi heard faint laughter. The shade was clear. But Amarachi didn't flinch. She walked toward her sister slowly, each step steady, as if she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. When she reached Ngozi, she didn't shout. She didn't cause a scene. She simply looked her sister in the eye and handed her a small, folded envelope. Her voice was soft but sharp as she leaned closer and whispered, "Here's your baby's birth certificate. You forgot something." The music didn't stop, but the room did. Conversations died. People turned. Ngozi's smile vanished. She stood frozen, the envelope trembling in her hand. Her fiancé looked confused. "What's going on?" he asked, his eyes darting between the two sisters. Ngozi tried to speak, but nothing came out. Amarachi didn't wait. She turned and walked away, taking Yuzo's hand as she left the hall. Behind her, gasps filled the air. Murmurs turned into loud whispers. A cousin ran to see what was in the envelope. Others stared at Ngozi, waiting for answers. Her perfect image cracked like glass. By nightfall, the news had spread. The engagement was over. Her fiancé left the hall in silence, taking off the ring he had just given her. Ngozi sat in the corner, humiliated, her lies uncovered in front of everyone. Meanwhile, outside, under the stars, Chinedu called Amarachi. His voice was full of regret and pain. "I'm sorry. I didn't know," he said quietly. Amarachi listened for a moment, then replied, "You knew enough to believe her. But not enough to deserve me." Then she ended the call. She looked down at Yuzo, who was holding her hand tightly. She smiled at him, brushed his cheek, and together they walked away from the noise, the lies, and the pain. Amarachi didn't just survive, she rose. And this time, she didn't need to explain anything to anyone. The truth had spoken for itself. By nightfall, the wedding party had turned into whispers and stares. Ngozi's once perfect world had crumbled right in front of everyone. Her fiancé had left the hall without saying much, clearly shaken by the truth he had just learned. Guests who had been dancing hours ago were now gathered in small groups, gossiping and pointing. Ngozi sat alone in a corner, her face pale, her pride shattered. The envelope Amarachi handed her had done more damage than 1,000 words ever could. It held the truth she had buried for years, and now the world knew it. That same night, Amarachi's phone rang. She saw the name and paused for a second, Chinedu. She picked up, and on the other end, his voice cracked. Amarachi. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have asked. I should have trusted you, he said through tears. But Amarachi's voice was calm. She didn't raise it, didn't cry. She simply said, you knew enough to believe her. But not enough to deserve me. She ended the call, then looked down at Yuzo, who was yawning and rubbing his eyes. She picked up his small backpack and held out her hand. Yuzo grabbed it without question, trusting her completely. And just like that, Amarachi walked away from it all, from the pain, the lies, the judgment. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. The truth had done its job. As they walked into the cool night, her head was held high, her steps steady. Amarachi had finally gotten her peace, and she had earned every bit of it.